Hi, I'm Ed Morosky, and I'm here to give you an introductory kind of course on how to delineate hydric soils, specifically when you're trying to delineate wetlands. Delineating hydric soils and wetlands starts here in an office setting. You need to pull together a lot of data. You want to pull together aerial maps, soil surveys. You want to compare that to the NRCS soil survey to determine what kind of hydric soils you have on site, and which may be hydric or not before you ever go out there. So that way you kind of have an idea whereabouts these soils are on the property. And then you'll bring some other documents, some other data with you into the field. So now let's go out into the field and delineate some hydric soils. Welcome back. Okay, now we're out in the field, and after doing our research in the office, we pulled some aerial photographs together and some soil maps, and we determined that we've got this potential signature of something going on in this area of the property. So we looked at the soil map, and this is the boundary of the soils from the soil survey, and it's telling us that we have a Caliga muck. We looked up the Caliga muck in the Hydric Soil Book of Florida, and it tells us that it's a hydric soil. And looking at the signature here, you can see there's something different about the center of this map compared to the surrounding area. That is this area right here. Just looking out, we pretty much think we do have something going on as far as a depressional herbaceous wetland from afar. Now what we want to do is we want to go down there and we want to kind of look at the soils in and around that area to try to get a feel for the site and kind of look at the soils and see if there's anything that's hydric there. So that's where we're going to go to next. You want to just follow me? Alright, so now we're down a little bit closer to the wetland. Obviously over here we definitely have some kind of a herbaceous marsh, and I can tell that based on the vegetation. Now here, as you can see right about where I'm standing, there's an obvious difference between this side where this type of vegetation is growing versus over here where we have a complete change in the vegetation. As you look kind of down along in front of me here, you can see how that vegetation patterns follow kind of a line. We definitely have something going on here. Now we want to look to see the soils. We want to look closer at the soils and start to delineate the hydric soils around this area. And what we'll do is I'll kind of lay out a transect, so to speak, across this basic little boundary to try to figure out where those hydric soils are. But what I like to do is we're going to go down into the very wettest portion of what looks to be the herbaceous wetland area, where there's probably, assuming we're going to find hydric soils, and we're going to look at those first, and then we're going to come up into this area and look at these soils. Try to get the most extreme type of soils in both areas. And then we're going to kind of work our way to the middle to where we see what's going on along this area. So let's go on down into the wetland. I'm going to start out here by digging us a soil pit to look at the soils here. Oh, and I wanted to explain my tool of choice, which is a basic spade type shovel. Real narrow. This is what we typically use to do our soil pits. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to dig a circular hole about 20 inches deep. We're going to pull this hole up out of the ground. Set that on down. Now, a couple other tools we're going to use. Measuring tape. We're going to use some kind of a knife. And if the soils are dry, we're going to wet it down with a water bottle. Lucky for us, the soil is pretty saturated, so we definitely have some water going on in here. Now, let's see if we got this deep enough for now. Well, we have about 10-inch plug right here. I think looking at what we have right here, this is probably going to be suitable for this first soil pit. Although there's times when you're going to want to have this soil pit at least 12 inches deep, maybe up to 20 inches deep, or however deep you need to go into the soil profile to determine if you do have hydric soils or not. So I'm going to take the soil plug here, I'm going to kind of clean it up. I want to kind of ignore a lot of this root mass on the top. But right off the bat, it's very greasy. We've got something definitely going on that top surface. So I'm just going to kind of clean this up. Now, what you want to do with your soils, you want to get a piece of it. You want to kind of, you're gonna rub it, because first you got to figure out if you have a clay or a loamy soil versus a sandy soil, and you'll rub or an organic soil. So I'll rub, and after about 3 or 4 rubs, I'm still feeling grit. I'm still feeling sand. So what we have here is a sandy textured soil, and the difference, the reason why I want to know that is because when we're looking at hydric soils, there are indicators in the soils that tell us whether or not they're hydric. And a key to understanding those indicators is knowing whether you have one or the other. You have either a sandy soil or a loamy soil. That kind of brings us to what type of indicators we need to be looking at. And for that, for the hydric soil indicators, we're going to use the field indicators of hydric soils in the United States. This is put out by the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the NRCS. It's basically a checklist of criteria of indicators that tell you whether or not the particular soil you're looking at is hydric or not. So the book is divided into 3 categories: all soil types, and then sandy soils and loamy soils. That's why I wanted to know if I had a sandy soil or I had a loamy soil. I have a sandy soil, so I'm able to kind of narrow down my search. But we're going to start out with all soil types. And we're going to go down the list to try to determine what type of soil type, if we have a hydric indicator or not. So in the very top surface here, I definitely have some muck. And what muck is it's organic material, it's vegetation that has decomposed, but only to a certain state. It's not completely decomposed because of the hydraulics, because of the water in the ground on a long enough period of time to inhibit the full breakdown of organic material by microorganisms. We definitely have some muck in the very top surface layer. It's not a very thick layer. It's probably only, I don't know, maybe a ½ an inch to an inch. Where we are in the region of the United States will also govern what type of indicators you're using in this book. So you have to know where you're at in the United States. And one of those, and what we're looking for is the land resource region. And that is right here. This map tells you, depending on what part of the country you're in, which indicators in this book are applicable to your area. We are in the U, down here in Florida, in Central Florida. Ours is the U. So we're only going to use hydric soil indicators that are mapped in this area. So I'll go down my list of soils, and I get down to, I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to kind of jump to the one that I know we're sitting at, and that is what I believe to be is A8, which is muck presence. Muck, that undecomposed, that partially decomposed organic material that's built up. We only need a very small layer, and we have that right here. Although I'm seeing, as we get further down, another layer. It's kind of, we have multiple layers here. We have that top bit here where we have a little real thick organic mat, but we also have that bit of layer of muck. Then we get into more of a sandy area that has some additional muck that's been kind of organic, that's been pulled down. But then I'm getting on top of this layer. That's real dark, mucky mineral soil type. The next tool we're going to use is the Munsell chart, because part of identifying these hydric soil indicators and soils in general is knowing the colors of the soils. And we utilize this book to figure out what color we have. Where we are in the world, we're going to use this particular palette. It's basically a book of different colors, kind of like if you're painting. As you read these indicators, you're going to find out that certain indicators require a certain color type. The one that I'm talking about right now, A8 muck presence, is Basically, we have to have, and I'll read it out here, is a layer of muck with a value of 3 or less and a chroma of 1 or less. Our value starts here and our chroma is here, and we kind of gauge which one we have based on that. And this being a real dark black soil type, we're somewhere down in here. It appears to have the muck content we need. Based on the color type, I believe we're meeting that indicator. So right here in this part of the wetland, we're meeting a hydric soil indicator of muck presence. So now what I want to do is I kind of want to work my way back out away from this area to try to look at the soils until I lose these indicators. So let's now move a little bit further up towards the upland portion of the habitat.